Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I came across a topic on social media surrounding fair use and copyright within the games industry that piqued my interest a little bit, as it usually does, and that surrounds the concepts regarding Let's Plays and additionally live streams. So, in my usual fashion, I decided to climb up on my now severely overused soapbox regarding fair use, as people still to this day fail to grasp some very simple concepts in regards to that. And all of this came about, unfortunately, due to social media. Yes, social media, the blight of the internet. Regardless, the topic raised was an engaging one for me. If not overly interesting to watch, it may at least be rather informative for everyone here. So let's take a look at how all of this comes about, but first do me a favor and subscribe to the channel, like the video if you find it worthwhile, and let me know your thoughts regarding all of this. Is transformative enough for fair use? Do Let's Plays fit the bill in that regard, or is something more required? Now, I came across the post from the account Eldritch Purity Sin regarding a recent Let's Play she did of the video game Demon Slayer, not to be confused with the anime Demon Slayer, where the video title itself was Demon Slayer Full Game, and the DMCA takedown was submitted by Sony Music Entertainment Japan. And this is not a content ID claim, this is indeed a full DMCA copyright takedown, which of course issues a strike to the YouTube channel in question. Now, there are a couple of different aspects regarding this takedown that need to be considered. The first is that Purity Sin was, from her statements, offered a review code for Demon Slayer by Sega, a point that I want everyone to keep in the back of your mind as we continue because that will become very relevant in a few minutes. And many, including Purity Sin herself, have assumed that the DMCA takedown was issued due to the music within the game, owing to the fact that this takedown came from Sony Music. And in the content used line of the takedown notice, it provides some Chinese lettering, which is a bit odd as this is a Japanese division of Sony, but nevertheless, I ran a translate on the characters used there, and the translation comes out to roughly as Ghost Foot Sound, or Ghost Footsteps, which means that the DMCA was issued not over music contained within the game, but a specific sound of a character or characterization within the game. The sound itself is ultimately unimportant, but it warrants clarifying as this is undoubtedly not in regards to music contained within the game. Now, this case is a bit of a special one in terms of Let's Plays and live streams, which we'll get into in a moment, but Let's Plays in general, and the same goes for live streaming video games, are not legal in terms of copyright law. Now, debate has raged online surrounding this concept for longer than my YouTube channel has existed. And many people, including one person who attempted to debate me on Twitter regarding this issue, have stuck to the concept that Let's Plays and live streams are fair use because they are transformative. Which, to varying lesser or greater degrees, they can be somewhat transformative insofar as the commentary that a Let's Player or live streamer provide. That is their own original content that is being added to the original when it is being delivered to the viewer, while at the same time it does nothing to modify the underlying copyrighted work, and also at the same time those Let's Plays and live streams are entirely dependent on the underlying work. Although with the transformative nature, people have also made the argument that the player decisions in the gameplay, when to move, when to jump, choices of dialogue selected, are their original choices and decisions which are transformative, but that's actually a lot more simplistic than people make it out to be. In other words, Let's Plays and live streams are what is known ultimately as a derivative work, something that has been discussed on this channel numerous times in the past. Now, as many of you are aware, through the discussions surrounding game mods, derivative works are fairly unique in their own right in terms of copyright law. Now, derivative works can be legal as long as they conform to fair use, and if they do conform to fair use, they also enjoy their very own copyright for the original elements they created within their derivative work, meaning others copying the content they created would be infringing on their copyright. But either way, fair use must be observed. And it is extremely difficult, if not borderline impossible, for live streams and Let's Plays to qualify for fair use strictly due to the nature of what is entailed as a part of that content, and that boils down to, as all things do, the 4 factors of fair use. Now, some people will doggedly adhere to the misconception that transformative is all that is needed, and some of them, much like what happened to me the other day, will claim that there is case law surrounding that. And in that, they're referring to the 1994 United States Supreme Court decision in the case of Campbell v. Acuff Rose Music, and because of that decision, they assume, while only looking at the most superficial level, that being transformative is all you need for something to be fair use. A clue, no. That lawsuit surrounded the music group Two Live Crew and their commercial parody of Roy Orbison's Oh Pretty Woman. And within that lawsuit, originally, the district court granted summary judgment in favor of 2 Live Crew, stating that the song was a parody that made fair use of the original song. The Court of Appeals, however, reversed that decision, stating that the commercial nature of the parody rendered 2 Live Crew's use of it presumptively unfair, meaning presumptively not fair use because they were selling the song, the music. That case then went before the Supreme Court, that the commercial nature of the song was only one element to be weighed in determining fair use, and that the Court of Appeals were mistaken in applying the presumption that a commercial use was presumptively unfair, and that the appeals court also, quote, erred in holding that 2 Live Crew had necessarily copied excessively from the Orbison original, considering the parodic purpose of the use. But that Supreme Court judgment in no way determined, as the person arguing with me on Twitter alleged, that being transformative outweighed or otherwise overruled any other considerations for fair use. So, let's look at 2 Live Crew's case in that regard. First, transformative. Now, as the courts concluded, 2 Live Crew's Pretty Woman was indeed a parody of Orbison's Oh Pretty Woman per Stanford law. In a parody, for example, the parodist transforms the original by holding it up to ridicule. At the same time, a work does not become a parody simply because the author models characters after those found in a famous work. So one of the factors, the transformative factor, was definitely met because it was indeed a parody, and the parody was defined as being transformative. Now, the second factor, the nature of the copyrighted work. This is considered as, is this fact or is this fiction? And quoting from Stanford again, because the dissemination of facts or information benefits the public, you have more leeway to copy from factual works, such as biographies, than you do from fictional works, such as plays or novels. In addition, you will have a stronger case for fair use if you copy the material from a published work than an unpublished work. The scope of fair use is narrower for unpublished works because an author has the right to control the first public appearance of his or her expression. So in this, Orbison's music was a published work of fiction, which is granted less leeway than if it were a dissemination of facts. The amount and substantiality of the portion taken would be the next factor. Now, in that, 2 Live Crew did borrow a fair amount, but by no means did they borrow all of Orbison's song, and more importantly, did it take the heart of the work, meaning the most memorable aspects? Now again, 2 Live Crew's song was a parody. And in this factor, Stanford points out, funnily enough, citing the Supreme Court case we are currently discussing, this rule, less is more, is not necessarily true in parody cases. A parodist is permitted to borrow quite a bit, even the heart of the original work, in order to conjure up the original work. That's because, as the Supreme Court has acknowledged, the heart is also what most readily conjures up the original for parody, and it is the heart at which the parody takes aim. And then there's the fourth factor, the effect of the use on the potential market. Now again, parody gets held to a different standard than all other forms of fair use, but this factor is a weight to measure whether or not the copyright owner of the original work might be deprived of income or potential income. For parody, they state, again, parody is given a slightly different fair use analysis with regards to the impact on the market. It's possible that a parody may diminish or even destroy the market value of the original work. That is, the parody may be so good that the public can never take the original work seriously again. Although this may cause a loss of income, it's not the same type of loss as when an infringer merely appropriates the work. As one judge explained, the economic effect of a parody with which we are concerned is not its potential to destroy or diminish the market for the original. Any bad review can have that effect, but whether it fulfills the demand for the original. So through all of that, the 2 Live Crew Supreme Court case made for very good case law for parodies. It does nothing for determining fair use in examples such as Let's Plays or live streams. Now again, we're speaking about Let's Plays and live streams in a general sense, so bear that in mind. I'm sure there are some cases that fit the model for fair use, but let's be honest here, it's not going to be very many of them. Let's Plays and live streams do provide a minimal amount of transformation in terms of the commentary and interactions provided, but Let's Plays in particular will always have a hard time meeting the criteria for fair use, as the amount and substantiality of the portion taken is excessively large and invariably do take the heart of the work, and also in many cases can serve as a direct market replacement for the original. This is particularly true in minimal game experiences, such as games like Firewatch would be a good example there. In Firewatch, your decision-making does very little to alter the overall outcome of the game as it goes along from beginning to middle to end, and your decision-making does very little to alter the outcome of the story, because the game of Overwatch is highly linear with only a couple of possible outcomes. Games such as that make it harder to avoid running afoul of factors such as taking the heart of the work and also serving as a market replacement for the original. Because once you've seen a live stream or a let's play of a game like Firewatch, you really don't have any real need to go and purchase the game for yourself. You've already experienced essentially all the game has to offer. Now, that is less true in more traditional games, as emergent storytelling and decisions players make are very different and can vary greatly from moment to moment. That can aid with the transformative aspect, but in terms of copyright law, a game is not only more than the sum of its parts, it is also the parts themselves. The character art, animations, story, audio assets, music. Each individual component can be caught up in all of that in addition to the overall amalgamation. And in that regard, the transformative element alone is not enough to determine fair use, and the other factors must be considered. And to that, the vast majority of Let's Plays and gameplay live streams will fall well short of meeting the threshold for fair use. Now, I've also had people ask if the majority of Let's Plays and live streams should be taken down simply because they are technically illegal, thinking that my assertion there is absurd, and to that I would say absolutely not. But people should be aware that Let's Plays and gameplay live streams, much like game mods, are derivative works, and they exist purely at the sufferance of the copyright holders. Now, the games industry by and large not only tend to not care about, but also tend to actively support the concept of live streams and Let's Plays because, as with everything within the corporate world, cost-benefit analysis told them that it was good for the company and their products. Because such content provides essentially free advertising and good word of mouth for them, and owing to the monumental popularity of live streams in particular and Let's Plays in general, the negative PR and legal costs necessary to go after such content would become not only reputationally destructive, but also cost prohibitive for them to go after content that is better served as the free advertising that it is. Now, there are exceptions to that, to be certain. Companies can change their minds about that decision in any individual instance and choose to pursue protecting their copyright in that instance at any given time. So no, Let's Plays and live streams are not technically legal in most instances. But what about this instance with Purity Sin? Well, I've not seen the video myself as it has been removed from YouTube, but by her own statements, I do know that the video in question was her compiling all of her live streams of the game into one long Let's Play that encompasses the playtime of the entire game. The title of the video even reflects that. Which, in a case like that, it's all but guaranteed that in that instance, there's probably no real way she could argue a case for fair use. But as I said at the beginning of this video, Purity Sin's case may be a unique one and separate to the fair use considerations we've discussed here. Remember at the beginning, I said that she was given the game by Sega, meaning she received a copy of the game from the game's publishers. So if, knowing Purity Sin as a Let's Player and a streamer, the game publishers gave her a code for the game under the terms that she produced content for the game, that would indicate that she has an expressed license for her coverage of Demon Slayer. An expressed license comes if there is an agreement between the two parties to cover the use. In this case, an agreement between Purity Sin and Sega for content of Demon Slayer. In that case, fair use need not even be considered, and if she does have such an agreement, that would make the DMCA takedown completely spurious regardless of whether or not the Let's Play were fair use, at least at a surface level. But she did say that she was given a key to review the game, which a review and a Let's Play are two entirely different things. If you were looking to create a video that critiques a video game, the less is more aspect comes very much into play. Critique relies on the less is more aspect when it comes to fair use. And live streaming the entire game and then compiling all of those live streams to put out basically a gameplay of the entire game would not meet the criteria of a review, and therefore would violate the terms of any such expressed license agreement, and so fair use would come back into play there. Now, as the game key was provided by Sega, that question comes down to whether or not Sega's license of any Sony music or sounds contained within Demon Slayer would cover, under their distribution license, the availability to sub-license for the purposes of review, critical commentary, or other forms of content creation. And again, this isn't about music, as it was the translated words ghost foot sound or ghost footsteps. It's likely that was an audio match for something in the game that also takes place within the anime. So quite likely what is happening here in Purity Sin's case is we have an issue of the left hand not knowing what the right hand was doing, and I would recommend to Purity Sin that she file a DMCA counter notification and make sure to include that she was operating under an express license from Sega for the Demon Slayer video game, if that is correct. Because while a full playthrough would undoubtedly not be covered under fair use, a license to create content or undefined content for the game means fair use would not even be needed. But again, that comes down to, was this a express license under the auspices of a review, or was this an express license under the auspices of simply content creation? That question would be the determining factor there. So it'll be an interesting case to see what happens, but I am rooting for Purity Sin, and I hope she does get this issue resolved rather quickly, as I do know from experience that suffering a spurious DMCA strike or even a justified DMCA strike either way can be extremely aggravating. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.